Welcome everyone, Arcblight here. In this video, I'm going to talk about Outriders, a third-person looter-shooter game that I have a major love-hate relationship with. A game that has the potential to be absolutely amazing, but right now it has so many issues that it leaves a lot to be desired. So let's go over what Outriders offers to new players and see what the pros and cons are of the game, and at the end I'll give my overall opinion on where I think the game stands right now. Let's dive right in. So when you start off in Outriders, you create a character which offers a decent amount of options for a shooter game. More options than most, but definitely less than you might find in an MMO RPG, for example. So the story kicks right off showing your new character arriving on a new world that soon becomes chaotic and intense. I won't ruin the details of the story, but I found the story to be interesting in many ways, but also really rushed in other ways. I like the take no prisoners attitude your character has and how serious and life-threatening that they made the story out to be, though characters can die abruptly and your character does not hesitate or feel remorse for ending the lives of those he perceives as an enemy. Many characters along the way have really intriguing storylines and roles, but this is where I also find my first major complaint. The characters who have the most interesting story plots seem to die off quickly, and then they are soon forgotten, while new enemies take their place. It felt very well done and dramatic for roughly the first half of the game, and then it felt rushed. The big bad of the story didn't feel like he was a bigger deal than the other characters that came before him. I think that Moloch, for example, was a much more intimidating bad guy, but the story quickly forgets about him and focuses on another big bad who seemed to come out of nowhere. But I'll leave the rest of the story as a surprise on that. So shortly after starting your story, you will get to a point where you choose a class for your character. You have 4 options and cannot change your class after selecting it, but it is really easy to make a new character and select a different class, since once you hit this story point, you can then skip the intro with any new character. The 4 classes are as follows. Pyromancer, who is a medium-range DPS and debuff class that uses fire skills to burn enemies, leaving ash in its wake. Technomancer, who is a long-range DPS and support using toxic and freezing abilities along with turrets, rockets, and miniguns to shoot down enemies. This class can also heal allies and can also focus on sniping as a playstyle. Next is Devastator, who is the close-range tank-like class that utilizes earth-based skills and armor buffs along with being able to reflect bullets back at enemies and impale them onto spikes. And then last we have the Trickster, who is a close-range DPS hit-and-run class who can teleport to enemies, slash them with energy blades, and even create a time bubble that slows enemies and projectiles. Each class has its benefits and has at least one build variation currently that can handle all content in the game. Patches and updates can change this a bit out of the meta, but there's usually enough balance to make every class very effective. While playing through the game, you will level up, which causes you to find higher level weapons and armor. You can have 2 primary weapons and 1 sidearm, and 5 armor pieces. There are 5 different rarities for all of these items. White common items with no modifiers, green unusual items with no modifiers, blue rare items with 1 modifier, purple epics which have the max of 2 modifiers, and legendaries which are static rolled gear that have 2 specific modifiers, one of which is only obtainable on that specific legendary item. What I mean by obtainable is that you can break down any item in the game, and if it has a modifier, then you will permanently unlock that modifier for use in crafting. Throughout the game, you will want to collect as many of these modifiers that you can so that you can customize your build to fit your playstyle. Along with the legendaries, there are armor set legendaries that will give you additional stats or buffs so long as you have the required amount of pieces equipped. The max character level is 30, and while you level up, you will also periodically obtain skill points. These points can be spent in your class tree, allowing you further customization to help define your build and playstyle. There are 3 main paths in your skill tree, and you get enough skill points to fill one path and have a few points to place elsewhere. As you progress through the story, you will find that all the quests can be repeated, and there are even 2 side quest lines that can be fully repeated so that you can be rewarded with a legendary item at the end of it. These are bounties and wild hunts. You have 10 of each, and after all 10 you will get a legendary and the option to reset them and repeat it over and over again if you choose so. Crafting will be unlocked a little ways through the story, and this allows you to use resources such as iron, leather, and titanium to craft weapons and armor. You obtain these resources by defeating enemies and also by dismantling gear. Weapons give iron and armor gives leather, for example. With an item that has a mod on it, you can change that mod to any other that you have unlocked, at least in that type, whether it's armor or weapons. With items that have 2 mods, you can only change one of the mods, and once done, you can never choose to change the second mod, but you can change the first one that you chose anytime that you like. You can also level up items which max out eventually at level 50. You can raise the attributes on items and even change the firing type of weapons. After clearing all of the main story, you will unlock the endgame activity known as Expeditions. You start off at a low challenge tier, and each time you complete your highest available tier, you will unlock the next tier difficulty, all the way up to the highest at challenge tier 15. Expeditions are timed runs where you pick a level from a list that is randomly generated, clear the enemies, and make your way through until you face the final boss. Once defeated, you will receive a ton of loot from the Outrider pod, and the amount and rarities will be affected by the rank that you receive for the completion, with the best possible loot coming from the gold ranked clears. You will also obtain pod resources that can be spent at the NPC Tiago for some starter legendaries and random epic loot options. The higher the challenge tier, the higher amount of resources you will obtain, with the gold rank challenge tier 15 rewarding about 74,000 pod resources. After clearing challenge tier 15, you will unlock the final challenge, which is Eye of the Storm. Here is another expedition-like level that is much harder, but it can be pretty rewarding. It will cost you around 40,000 drop pod resources to even try it, so make sure you're ready and you have enough resources that you're willing to spend. That covers most of what Outriders has to offer, at least in its current state, and beyond those things, you mainly focus on getting better items for your build, finding mods that you're missing, and trying to have better clear times in your expeditions. So with all of that out of the way, let's talk about the pros and cons of Outriders and what my opinion of the game is overall. So as far as the pros, I think the abilities for each class are very interesting and they're fun to utilize, especially with the right mods and legendaries to help boost those. I think the mod system overall is incredibly well done and offers a lot of build variety, and it also allows you to be excited for all loot drops. Even with a green or a blue item that can be upgraded in Rarity, it's possible to have the mod and attribute combinations that you're looking for. I think the amount of loot you receive in the game is great, and it makes it exciting to see all the items drop from the end of an expedition. Many other games that I play are very stingy with the loot drops or simply drop a ton of blatantly unusable items. I also like the way that an expedition feels. I enjoy the progressive unlocking of the other tiers until you get to the maximum one. When you have a good group of friends to play with and when the connection is good, multiplayer feels great and it adds to the overall enjoyment. But there's the key statement of when the connection is good. And speaking of the cons, there are plenty. From the launch of the game, there have been many major bugs, including inventory wipes and drastic balance issues between the classes and builds. Inventory wipes have been addressed, but many other bugs and issues still exist in the game currently. There are severe connection stability issues between a lot of players, and many builds for classes are simply ineffective, especially compared to another build. The biggest issue of all, though, is how incredibly slow the developers are to release updates and fixes. I know things like this can take a lot of time and effort, but a lot of these issues are basically game-breaking for a lot of people, and waiting over a month for a fix can cause many people to turn away and not look back. I hope that going forward, the developers can be more on top of this and add in enough incentives to get players to return, though it's a very hard thing to do to get people to come back. Other cons are with the endgame. Expeditions are fun and all, but the fact that they are linear and timed makes for a quick burnout for many people. I myself enjoy a good grind, but when it's all time limited activities, it completely throws out the idea of having any tank or support builds, when it's way more effective to just go with glass cannon DPS builds. Though a better balance of the skill trees could also help, I still think there should be harder, non-timed expeditions that allow flexibility with your build, especially for the sake of a team working together. Other game modes would also be nice, such as a battleground or arena style area where you could hold your ground against waves of enemies. Even if they use the same assets to save time, I still think it would be really great. I also think Tiago should have a rotating legendary loot pool. Even if they wanted to have some legendaries not show up in his wares, I still think a better variety could help make it more exciting, especially day to day or even just week to week, kind of like Xur from Destiny 2. Next for a con, and to me this is a big one, but to others they may not care in the least. I really want a transmog system. There are many awesome looking pieces of gear and weapon skins, but the odds of finding god rolls on gear that matches or even looks the way that you prefer is basically impossible. The legendary sets look amazing as well, and it would be nice to have the style of one without actually using them in your loadout. Even if you have to loot it before it's unlocked or spend in-game resources to change the looks, I think it would be greatly appreciated by a lot of players. So right now, it's hard to recommend this game to people. Some people will love it and be incredibly tolerable to the issues. Some people won't even notice some of the issues at all depending on their internet or PC build or just by simple luck. But some people are going to struggle from the beginning to the end with stability, bugs, or even just bad luck. So I can't say to every person out there that they should try this game. I personally enjoy this game, but I'm taking a break right now until some of the bugs are ironed out. I'll be back hopefully, and with the right updates, this game can be absolutely amazing. But right now, it just isn't. With the right DLC or expansions, this could evolve into one of the best games I've ever played, but I fear that it's not going to be anytime soon, and I'm also not sure how many people want to wait that long. Time will tell though. I hope you enjoyed this review, and if there are things that I missed or things you want to mention, feel free to drop it down in the comments below. I have a few Outriders in my Discord, so feel free to join us if you're looking for other people to game with, and also like and subscribe for future gaming content and news, and as always everyone, thanks for watching.